What's up, Motocross Action? I'm Josh Mosman, and we just got done riding the new 2021 KTM 250SXF. This bike is back for the new year with updated forks, updated shock, updated linkage with new Skf Seals. It has the electric starting as usual, new Dunlop MX33 tires instead of the 3S tires. It's got an orange rear fender instead of the white one. It has the orange airbox as well to go with the rear fender. It has updated mapping, and that's pretty much it for the 2021 KTM 250SXF. This is the bike that won MXA's 2020 250 4-stroke Shootout, and it's back for the new model year with updates to refine it, give it a little more power with that updated Map 2 setting, and also more plush suspension that's easier to use. The air forks have had a bad rap over the last few years from a lot of other manufacturers struggling to find the setting, and even KTM and WP struggling to find the right settings with their air forks. Now the forks are all new, and the main character you need to remember when you're thinking about the new forks is bypass. Bypass, bypass, bypass. There's an oil bypass, air bypass, and all this does is try to make the forks more plush feeling, more predictable feeling, so you don't get a lot of built up pressure when you're getting low in the stroke. Another nice part about the WP air forks is that there's only one Schrader valve at the top of the fork where you adjust the air pressure. So on the left side fork, you use the Schrader valve to put in the air settings, and that's your spring rate, while the right fork is the valving. It has the shim stack that controls the speed at which oil can flow through the forks to dampen your forks. The nice part about the KTM, Husqvarna, and soon to be Gas WP air forks is that you can really tailor these forks to fit a wide range of riders. Previous model air forks have gotten a bad rap because when the suspension compresses and the forks compress, the air at the bottom of the fork builds up hard, and it gives you kind of a harsh sensation at the handlebars. With the extra air bypass and also the oil bypasses in the forks, you're blowing off more steam and letting out some pressure to really make the forks more plush and handle more like a spring fork. So we're really appreciative of that. KTM also took away the bottoming cone at the bottom of their forks and added a bump stop at the bottom. With this, they were able to have more room at the bottom of their fork legs and put in an adjustable by hand rebound clicker. So that's really nice. You don't have to reach down there. Now you just reach down there with your hand, make the clicks in or out to really dial in the rebound on your forks. These are the same forks that we saw in the KTM and Rockstar 450 factory editions last year, and they're also coming on the KTM 450, 350, and this 250 model for the 2021 model year. These forks have been awesome. We've already tested the 350, we've already tested the 450. Today is our first day riding the 250 SXF. The 250 forks are recommended to be set at 10.4 bar, so that's a pretty soft setting for me. With the stock setting, I was feeling like the forks were kind of diving in too far into the stroke, coming into the corners, and I was kind of getting hung up at the bottom of the stroke. But the nice part about the WP air forks is you pump it up super easily with your hand pump, and that's basically adjusting the spring rate of the fork. So a lot easier to do that at the track than it is to swap out springs on a spring fork, and that was really nice for me. Today I ran 10.8 bar. I was able to find that holdup that I was liking coming into the corners, get a smooth roll on through the apex of the corner with that. Today I ran the sag at 105. That's what we recommend for the KTMs. And as far as the shock goes, the shock didn't get a lot of updates, but it did get a Vitong O-ring inside of the shock to basically fight off heat and add durability. And they also got the Skf Seals that we saw in the factory editions last year. Those came with the new model 2021 bike. So messing around with the Skf Seals with our hands, you could feel a major difference on the track. The bike feels good, and it's definitely overall a more plush and more forgiving bike to ride. So that was a nice part for today. As far as mapping goes, when you read the KTM press release, it says that they updated the mapping for the new model year, but it doesn't talk about any updates inside of the engine. This bike feels a lot like it did last year. Map 1 and Map 2 feel pretty similar than they did last year. Map 2 is definitely a little more aggressive off the bottom end, and that's what I chose to stay in, as I really appreciate the extra power that Map 2 gave me. We also brought our 2020 KTM 250 SXF out here to test back back to back with this model. Our 2020 model does have a lot of hours on it, but I was still able to test the suspension and also a little bit of gearing with it. Last year we went up a tooth on the rear. We added a 52 rear sprocket, where this one comes with stock with a 51. 52 was much better for us today. We also ran it with the ventilated airbox cover that comes as an option on this bike. The bike as much air as we could. Running that 52 rear sprocket definitely helped getting out of the corners, and that's something if I'm going to race this bike in its stock form without putting any mods into it, I definitely would add a tooth to the rear sprocket. The 2020 model wasn't as plush coming into corners. The air would kind of ramp up at the bottom a little bit more. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't a huge difference. It wasn't night and day. The engine character on the KTM 250SXF is definitely more of a top-end bike. This thing wants to be wrung out to the rev limiter, which is super high, all the way up at 14,000 RPM. And that's where this bike really likes to make its peak horsepower. It's tempting to want to shift coming out of corners because this thing does have some good torque. If you want to get the most out of your 250SXF, ring it to the top of the RPMs. Besides the Yamaha and the Suzuki, the Kawasaki and Honda 250s are a lot like the KTM and Husqvarna models, where they just want to be rung high up in the RPMs, and that's really where those guys put the peak of their horsepower, where Suzuki and Yamaha, you have more of a bottom end hit. Two different characteristics when you're choosing between Yamaha and KTM, and I'm super excited to compare this new model with our 2021 Yamaha YZ250F that we're going to be getting on in just a couple days. So the overall power character of this bike, it's a rever. If you're riding it down a fast straightaway and you think you need to shift, wait just a little bit longer, because that's where you're going to find the meat and potatoes power of the KTM 250. So riding this bike in its stock form, yeah, you're going to have to rev it super hard to get up there in the RPMs, but like I said today, we did try with the 52 rear sprocket, and that helped a lot coming out of the corners. So if you're going to add some upgrades to this bike, I definitely would look into gearing and also maybe an exhaust, and even sending your ECU to Twisted Development or your favorite ECU mapping service, where they can really find a little more power out of the bottom end. So this bike has a great platform to start out with. It's got the ultra durable clutch, electric starting, great Brembo brakes, and like we always like to say, this bike is much lighter than the rest of the bikes in the class at 218 pounds. So overall, the MXA Wrecking Crew appreciates the KTM 250SXF, but we are excited to put this up against the updated Kawasaki KX250 and also the updated Yamaha YZ250F for MXA's 250 Shootout. So stay tuned to motocrossactionmag.com for the latest news, reviews, race results, more. And as always, today was just day one on the 2021 KTM 250. So for a more in-depth article where we break down all the details on this bike and others, make sure to check out a printed edition of Motocross Action Magazine at your local newsstand, or by subscribing on our website, motocrossactionmag.com. And to stay up to date with our latest MXA First Ride videos, you can click that subscribe button on YouTube to check us out there. And wait, before you go, make sure to check out our First Ride video, as we just got done riding the 2021 KX250, and although it hasn't had a lot of updates since 2006, we did put some time on the 2021 Yamaha YZ252 stroke, and that video is here as well.